My goodness, good morning, everyone. What a great amount of people. This is fantastic. I'm gonna give just one more second for anybody else that's still popping in. Hi, Lisa. Well, I'm Jennifer Robinson. I am the Director of Human Resources at Franklin County Public Health. I am also lucky enough to be one of the board members for the Human Resources Association for Central Ohio. And I am absolutely thrilled to work with the workforce development team on this really awesome program today called Coaching COVID. Someone's having a fire alarm. I'm so sorry. I wanted to thank you all for being here. This is a fantastic topic. It is very timely, and I'm really just overwhelmed with the amount of talent that we have that is here today to be able to talk more about COVID and how to help in that facility. So that all being said, again, from Harako, thank you so much for being here. You have questions, please use the chat function and we'll be checking that periodically. And I'd like to introduce Opal Brandt from the Workforce Development Board of Central Ohio, who is our partner in this. And Opal, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer. First of all, I just want to thank everyone, all of the participants and all the panelists for being here. As Jennifer stated, I'm Opal Brandt. I'm the Director of Business Solutions with the Workforce Development Board of Central Ohio. And we are happy to partner with Harako because if you don't know, the Workforce Development Board's mission is really to reskill and train individuals in our community to meet the needs of businesses. And as HR professionals and workforce professionals, I think it's important that we come together periodically to learn information from each other. The vision behind Coaching Through COVID-19, we know that we all, 6 months ago, were thrown into a whirlwind, and the HR professional has coaching responsibilities to employees. And as you all know, that there's been a lot of churn in the talent in this area with our employers. And so you're experiencing issues. And so we wanted to bring together HR professionals, but also workforce professionals to really talk about how it has impacted job seekers really trying to engage employment during this time. So we're happy that you're all here. A little bit about what the goal of Business Solutions is with the Workforce Development Board. Our goal as a Business Solutions team is to really be the strategic partner for workforce development with our business community in this region in Franklin County. What we do is look at our workforce ecosystem and figure out how we can provide the best resources and training programs to train individuals in Central Ohio for what the business's need is. We also have resources available to businesses to help reskill their current employees. And that's something that we always want to make sure businesses know, that we have resources that will help you really create the talent pipeline you need from within the community and within your organization. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to our wonderful facilitator, Rachel Barb. She is also the lead with our Central Ohio Healthcare Sector Partnership, and I'm so happy that she's here and agreed to facilitate this conversation with us.
Great, thank you, Opal, and thank you to Jennifer for kicking us off. So again, I'm Rachel Barb with Mount Carmel Health System, and glad to be here today discussing topics as we are all navigating through the space of our continued COVID readiness. So I'd like to take an opportunity then to have our facilitators as well as presenters introduce themselves and a little bit about where they're representing today. So we could start with Andrea.
Sure, thank you, Rachel. My name is Andrea Applegate, and my company is Applegate Talent Strategies, which I launched 4 years ago with the express purpose of helping employers get the best out of their people and helping their employees have the best experience at work. Fundamental to the work that I do is the principle that all employees, and it doesn't matter what their job is, how much they get paid, how much education was required to do their job, all employees want to do inspiring work and want to be valued and respected while doing that work. My point of view is a little bit different than my co-panelists, so I want to just point those things out. So first of all, my point of view is that of the employer, and by that I mean business owners, executives, leaders, managers, supervisors, bosses, anybody who has responsibility over the work of others. And you could have responsibility for one person, you could have responsibility for 500 people. People who have responsibility over other people are going to describe themselves differently. Bosses, supervisors, managers, leaders, directors, you know, whatever. I'm going to use, just for clarity and simplicity's sake, I'm going to call those people bosses today. So that's one point of view, representing the point of view of the employer. And the second thing is that the organizations who are my clients, whether they are businesses, for-profits or nonprofits, most of my clients are organizations with fewer than 100 employees, though a couple of them have a few hundred employees. And the situations that I encounter and the advice that I give is different than is going to be relevant to some of my co-panelists who are dealing with thousands of employees. So different situations require different solutions. Other than that, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'm very excited to be a part of this.
Great, thank you very much. Amy, if you'd like to introduce yourself, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Moore. I'm the Director of Human Resources for Primary One Health. I see a few familiar faces out there, so hi, if we know each other. Primary One Health we are a primary care organization. We are hi Stacy. We are a federally qualified health center with 11 locations around Central Ohio. Struggling day to day with the same issues I'm sure everyone's grappling with. So I'll be representing the HR within an organization's viewpoint on how we've handled some of this and what we're encountering on a day-to-day, some successes and some failures that we've had along the way as well. So that will be what I'm speaking to.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Ahmed, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you for having me as well. My name is Ahmed Abakar. I'm the Director of Workforce Development at Jewish Family Services. Our goal is to find talent and upskill them and provide them to agencies who are seeking those talents. And again, I'm speaking from a client point of view and employer side of point of view as well. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful, thank you. So Opal, Chance, do we have other folks that we want to have connect, or are we ready to jump into our conversation?
I think we can jump in, Rachel.
Okay.
I'd like to also add, if I may, that if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box. We recommend that you use speaker view so you can see a full view of the person that's speaking at that time. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you for those reminders, and also a reminder to limit background noise if you're able to mute if you are not in an active conversation. So to kick things off from our conversation and dialogue that we've had thus far, posting this question out to our participants, what has been the greatest challenge that you have faced throughout navigation through COVID from either the employer perspective and or job seeker perspective? And if you can highlight some wins and then some additional challenges from that perspective as you've navigated the last 6 months. And if from the group perspective, we want to hand that over to Ahmed, if you want to talk a little bit about those challenges that you know have been faced in the workspace.
Well, workforce around the world are currently wrestling with the unprecedented change of what's happening to the wake of COVID, but it's worth highlighting the fact that it doesn't just impact everyone else and disrupts everything else, but there's two simultaneously, right? So the first disruption is the director point of view by the company and their organization. The second one is really the employee having to secure basic necessities that they require. Millions of people around the world are now adjusting to this new work, really rhythm of conducting business. People are working from their living room while they're patiently becoming a teacher to their to their kids, right? So I think what Jewish Family Services really had led on is putting people first, a really great way of pivoting how to adapt to their current climate. It's really still unsettling because a lot of our job seekers who are currently working from home are feeling that pressure, dealing with their kids as well. So there's that whole work-life balance. How do I figure out what I need to figure out when it comes to, accomplishing my task on a daily basis, or really my kids who depend on me to really come forth and try to get that assistance that they need. It's really best to engage with people to establish a different ways of working and to adapt, right? So the mindset should really serve the business, not just immediately in the crisis, but for years on ahead. So that's how I feel about that. I think you were muted.
Yes, good call there. Yes. So from that perspective, if we have other team members that wanted to jump in and piggyback off of the greatest challenge, coaching colleagues, employees, job seekers through COVID.
Sure. If it's okay, I'll go. I found out yesterday we did an active count in 5% of our staff right now on FMLA, either between normal FMLA or the Families First expanded FMLA. And so part of the challenge is trying to keep morale up with the people who are here and doing a whole lot more with less. There's a feeling of inequity because they see people who are out on leave for legitimate reasons, but they're left doing the work. So trying to offer different, from a coaching perspective, trying to offer different types of incentives, recognition for the extraordinary effort that is happening for the people who are still working, while also trying to be flexible and empathetic to the people who are on FMLA and using that time. And it's a situation that changes week by week. I mean, people who applied for their FFCRA leave 2 weeks ago, their school systems have now changed plans twice in that last 2 weeks. So we've had to be very flexible with scheduling and very flexible with kind of taking things on a day-by-day basis, which is challenging to do in healthcare when we're trying to make sure that we have enough coverage there to keep our sites running. We're doing drive-through testing 3 days a week. So there's a lot of moving pieces and parts. So it's really just trying to keep everyone motivated, say good things to people, encourage the good things that are happening. And with managers, just we're repeating a lot of the same things over and over again. We are planning this as it comes. There's no playbook for how we're doing this. And so flexibility and trust of the employees that are out on leave is key, because there's some building resentment with managers too. So just trying to get them to understand that this is the situation we're in. They have the leave. We're going to figure out a way to make it work. And really just trying to reinforce that we're monitoring the numbers. We know what it is, but we have to deal with the reality of it. And a lot of creative problem solving, having people work remote, that never worked before. We went from having 0 remote workforce before this happened to now probably about 40% of our workforce is working remotely. And all the associated issues that come with that, as far as non-exempt staff working remote and time tracking and how do they handle breaks. And now kids are home and in school. And so how are we tracking and monitoring work to make sure that work is actually getting done? When 6 months ago, we didn't even really have a telecommuting policy because it wasn't even an option in our organization. So it feels very fast and loose, especially as an HR professional, because we're used to having policy and precedent to fall back on. And none of this has really even been litigated yet. So we don't know, even if we make a mistake, what the potential ramifications of that mistake might be. So it's over communication. We're still not doing as good of a job in communicating as we should be. So trying to catch ourselves on that and communicate as early and as often as we can, both ways, up and down.
Amy, thank you for that. That really is a springboard into either an opportunity to continue for your dialogue and or to really post that out to the group. You know, what have been the tips and tricks for navigating job seekers through the technological challenges, either not having access to the internet at home and or multiple family members using devices? You know, what have we found from a resource perspective, advice that we can share with our job seekers on how they've been able to kind of overcome or at least work through those challenges?
If I may, I think with food insecurity, along with technological needs, I think working with a population who utilized our offices to really gain those type of access is now limited or even not available anymore due to social distancing and the whole COVID. I think what we really need to focus on is work on other agencies that are, you know, providing those technology assistance to job seekers who can't or don't have that the means of getting those type of assistance. I know Jewish Family Services was successful in getting donations from laptops to working with third-party agencies that are providing hotspots to clients so that they can have accessibility. And now with schools getting those kind of accessibilities, parents can utilize that as well. Not only are they helping their children, but they're also helping themselves help their children by having those type of access at their homes. And most of you would probably know the population of that what we're used to. I think I've had a conversation with my colleague. I think she was addressing that our job seekers, that poverty looks different, more broad now. Our clients are not just those who are experiencing long-term generational poverty, but this is the first time their financial crisis. Head of households during the draining their retirement for their 401k, they have had long-lasting impact on economic or on unpredictable costs, right? So the new population is in need of financial assistance. So how do we overcome that, right? It's really about collaboration. It's really about connecting them to the resource that they need. Jewish Family Services has a workshop that is really catered to everyone's skills to upskill them into getting them into their career path and coaching them to find that talent or that recruiter that is looking for their talent. So we're basically sharpening everybody's tool. So at the moment, thank you.
Thank you for that, Ahmed.
So if I may, I'd like to go back to Amy's point about some of the specific challenges that the managers are experiencing, especially with trust. And that's a big one. I would say that that's probably, if not the biggest, among the top 3 or 4 challenges that bosses say that they feel uncomfortable with in this situation. And it's, work is all about relationships, and above our technical skills, the most important quality for success is how we develop and manage our relationships with other people. And so in this situation, when we're talking about coaching through COVID, it's our relationships with the people who report to us, our relationships with the people that we lead, our relationships with the people who depend on us for their livelihoods. And I want to say that again, the people who depend on us for their livelihoods. So whether we are managing 1 person or 500 people, all of those people depend on us and the relationship that we have with them. How much attention do we pay to those relationships, and how much intention do we put into those relationships? And I'm a little bit turning it around, because a lot of times managers, bosses say, well, those people are there to support me. They're there to make my job easier. And that's backwards. Our job as leaders, as managers, as bosses is to support and to help the people who report to us. When it comes to trust, there's one exercise that I go through with my clients and have them write on separate pieces of paper, and that's where, you know, our sticky notes come in handy. But just write down the names of all of the people who report to us, and you're going to have two piles. You're going to have your trust pile and your don't trust pile. The people you trust is in one. People you don't trust, people you're having the most challenge with, people you're not sure what they're doing, people who, you know, seem squirrely, whatever it is. So you're going to have those different piles. And then you need to ask yourself for every name in each pile. So start with whichever one is easiest for you, but start with, how did it get this way? Why is this person in this pile? I trust this person. Why do I trust this person? What is it about this person that I trust? And then what is it about this person that I don't trust? And lean into, what is it that you have done that has caused that? So for instance, most of us, the people that we trust are the people that are in our circle, in our group. And those people are the people who are most like us, that we most have in common with. These are people that we're gonna, you know, we're email pals with, or maybe we're having lunch together, or, you know, we're the ones that are talking together because we have things in common with. And so naturally, when we feel comfortable with someone, we're gonna have a trusting relationship with that person. So the key is, what is it that you need to do then for the people that you don't trust? What work do you need to put into developing that relationship? Because most of the time, what they're doing is not actually things that are to be untrusted. It's the relationship is not strong. So for the people that you don't trust, you need to invest more time and more intention in that relationship. You are accountable for every name in that pile. You are accountable and you're responsible for the livelihoods of everybody in that pile. And understand then that a lack of trust naturally leads to, I'm going to have a long dramatic pause, but I know all of you know, a lack of trust leads to micromanaging. And micromanaging is no fun for everybody. It's no fun for the manager because it's exhausting to be constantly looking over somebody's shoulder. And it is demoralizing for the person to be micromanaged. So my advice from a coaching through COVID perspective is to work on your relationships and figure out how you can turn that trust around so that you do trust people on your team.
Thank you. Well said. So to really, as a follow-up to that, from Amy's point and Andrea highlighting, are there ways in which we can provide a framework for how leaders can rethink how they can connect with their teams, knowing that most of our workforce is remote at this point, when colleagues are used to those informal connections? How have we found successful ways to build those partnerships during remote work?
One thing that we've done or are trying to do is reinforce that the threshold for failure looks a little bit different now than it did earlier this year. That, you know, you always want to have an environment where it feels safe to try and safe to fail. But now it's a little bit different because so much of this is so unprecedented that creating an environment where, you know, if you try something and it's not working, that's okay. Like the world's not going to come crashing down on you if you try something that doesn't work. And trying to explain to managers with their staff too, that it's not about lowering your expectations for performance or lowering your standards, but giving more grace through this process, because we're trying to figure this out from an operational perspective and from an administrative perspective and keep the doors to the organization open. but we're also people at the core of it, and we're managing people who are also trying to figure this out. People who might never have had to worry about how to manage someone watching their children during the day because school was always there. And so it's just managing and level setting your expectations, because this is such a strain in all corners of our lives, that not expecting people to have immediate correct answers right away, and give your staff some of that grace to they're figuring it out as much as we are, just in different areas. So just being kind, being more empathetic with what's going on, but then also at the same time saying, you're here, and for us all, let's make this the one stable thing that we have. Then let's try to figure this out and make work one less amount of a stressor for you. And so when we've had people kind of freak out about what their job is going to look like, or if they're going to have a job, in our case, as an organization, we're very fortunate that we've not laid anyone off. And just kind of reinforcing to both managers and staff, like, let's look at this piece by piece. We don't have any layoffs right now. We still are seeing patients. We've figured out a way to make that happen. And this is how, by asking you to work in areas that you might not have worked in, we're finding a way to keep you employed. And so that's one less thing. So your flexibility actually makes your life easier, or at least one aspect of your life, because by being willing to work in another area and be trained, not only are you building skills that will benefit you whenever the pandemic is over, you're built, like, now you know how to do telehealth, when 6 months ago that wasn't even something that we were doing as an organization. So not only is there a silver lining to that piece, but by being nimble and being willing to not just hold on to the one thing that you had before, you're keeping a paycheck coming in, and you're still providing a service to the patients. And one thing I think that's been helpful for us too is, as a nonprofit and being a mission-oriented organization, we can always go back to the mission too and say, when you're having a bad day, look at the people that you're interacting with on a day-to-day. Maybe they're coming for a COVID test and they're scared to death that they're going to have COVID, and you're able to help bring them through that process and give them some small comfort. And you're doing something that impacts your community on a daily basis. So trying to broaden them out to see the big picture, because I think especially now everyone gets so tunnel vision on what's in front of them and what the next crisis is going to be, that being able to focus on some of the good things that are happening as a result of this is just trying to change the perspective a little bit.
No, Amy, well said. I think you really highlighted on, the willingness to be nimble, the versatility, as well as being in a position to control what you can control, as so many things are outside of our control. But it's how you show up and how willing you are to be flexible with all of the challenges that come. So that's fantastic. So if we could spend just a little bit more time from the managerial perspective on ways in which to improve relationships. There's a note in the chat about meeting one-on-one, and if there are other steps, tips, tricks that our facilitators have found to continue to build those trusting relationships, and what does that connection look like, and another example of how that relationship has either improved or what has been done to foster that trusting communication.
Well, first, Rachel, I'd like to highlight something that Amy has said a couple of times, and she has said that it is the position of her company, her organization, to tell the truth, to not lie, to not cover up, to not whitewash, to not do whatever. And I think that is so important in terms of relationships, because if people can't trust what you're saying, they're just not going to be in it for you. And I said at the very beginning that one of the principles of the work that I do is that all employees want to do inspiring work and want to be valued and trusted when doing that work. So that also goes into motivation and control. And those are opposite ends of, or the different sides of the same coin, I guess, motivation and control. So when we're talking about how to motivate people, everybody, each one of us, the 120 people who are on this call, each one of us is motivated differently. The only way that our managers, our bosses can know what motivates us is to ask us. To find out what are the intrinsic motivators for us and then deliver those things. Ask what each one of our employees' preferences are and strengths. So I know that this is advice that's good for smaller teams. It's really impossible to manage if you've got 5,000 employees. You can't ask everybody what their preferences are and what their strengths are. But for smaller teams, what are your preferences? What are your strengths? What do you like to do? What are you good at doing? And I put preferences first because that's really a fantastic way to inspire somebody to give them work that they love to do, making sure that the work is getting done, but organizing people's expectations so that the work that they're doing fits with what they're great at doing. And the other thing is control, and that's on the other side of it. Some people like to have a whole bunch of control over what they do during the day, and they don't want to have someone hovering over them. Other people don't like to have a lot of control at all. They want to have, narrow boundaries because that makes them feel comfortable. They know what is exactly expected of them. So ask your employees, don't just assume that the way that your preference is for control is their preference for control, because then you're just setting it up for missed expectations. So find out from each employee, how much control do you want? How often do you want to check in with me? What kind of reports do you want to give me so that I can be aware of the milestones that you're meeting and the work that you're accomplishing?
I'd like to echo on my panelists as well. Coaching your staff involves them arriving at a certain situation on their own, instead of relying on the boss to fall back on, right? Effective leaders like, the ones we have at Jewish Family Services really guide their staff to work on their own to get things and they figure it out. And that trust, a lot of you have said that, and I want to echo it as well. Trusting your staff makes a smart decision. When feeling trusted, the work satisfaction increases, work gets done effectively, and the quality of the work improves. Unfortunately, a lot of managers really fall short and focus on success, which is the bottom line result overall, right? But the fact is that to achieve the best, satisfaction through employers and staff is really to develop and inspire your staff, right? If the supervisor is really getting their nitty gritty and there with their staff, it really shows that it's not more of a dictatorship type of style where, they're looking over your shoulder and they're micromanaging you constantly, but they're willing to get in there. I, for one, I'm a believer, and mostly from our senior leadership at Jewish Family Services, they're right there in the front lines. So I look forward to people who really inspire their staff, and also show by leadership, by actually doing the work as well. So I'm just echoing my panelist here. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So really to continue on that thought, question in the chat, how have you reimagined engagement within your organization, and some small ways in which engagement has been achieved? Small team of 11 is planning to meet in the park in the near future. So other thoughts, tips and tricks and ideas on ways in which to rethink engagement, how to increase engagement, and are there safe ways to gather in groups during this period?
We every year there is National Health Center Week, and it's a celebration week long of what health centers do. It's done at the national level, and then local health centers always kind of do their own thing. And in years past, it's been a week of activities for our patients. Like they'll come in and we'll deliver toiletry kits to homeless camps out on the land and in the area. And patients come in one day and they'll give a healthy snack. And some days we give away books for kids and things like that. And we do the same thing on the staff side. We have something every day that we do for staff, and always kind of culminated with all 330 of us going to a Clippers game and having that one chance to socialize as a big group. And so obviously this year we couldn't do that, but we still wanted to recognize the work that's being done as health centers and the role we're playing in fighting the pandemic, and recognize our employees for making the commitment to community health. So it's little things, but I can feel like they really kind of moved the needle a little bit this summer on just providing a little bit of sense of normalcy, that we're still celebrating National Health Center Week, even in the midst of all this is happening, but getting a little creative with how we did some of the recognition. So one of the activities, in addition to the Clippers game, was providing lunch at all of our locations and giving everyone at each site a chance to sit down and enjoy a meal together, which wouldn't typically happen during a normal day. It's a health center and we don't close for lunch. So this year, knowing that any type of communal eating was probably not going to be possible, we decided to do DoorDash gift cards for the entire organization and had those mailed out or emailed out to everyone that first week. And that went really, really well. People really appreciated that, and the recognition of, we can't all meet, but here's dinner or lunch on us, and enjoy it with your family and that kind of thing. And so the next day we did electronic Amazon cards, and they could do whatever they wanted. You can buy anything on Amazon. So they really enjoyed that, and still had t-shirts made and did the normal things. But it was a way that, even though we didn't have our executives handing out physical gift cards like we normally would and making that personal connection with people out in the sites, they still felt recognized. They felt seen. They know that it's important work that they're doing. And again, they still had that touch point from the normal recognition that they see in years past. So it's little things, but, still trying to provide them some sense of team camaraderie, teamwork. We're all kind of trying to do this together. So, we have our annual engagement survey coming out in the next couple of weeks. So I'll be interested to see how much that actually did impact staff. But at least anecdotally, I know people were very pleased with how we were able to keep some semblance of that celebratory week, even through the limited circumstance we have now.
Well, I think those are fantastic examples, and while they might sound like little things, are wonderful ways in which to recognize your colleagues. So yes, very curious to see about the engagement survey. So you'll have to keep the group posted. So just as a call out and a reminder and an ask, please post your questions in the chat so we can take a look at those in real time and provide either thought-provoking conversation starters and or ask questions, or piggyback and follow up onto other questions. So one other area that I think it's important for us to talk about would be our job seekers. And if we want to talk for a moment about job seekers and ways in which that we've been able to engage with our job seekers, and what are the job seekers asking of us during this COVID period of time? Are they looking to have in-person interviews, and are those requests being honored? Are they looking to come in and have some face-to-face conversation for either a realistic job preview, a job shadowing experience? What is that looking like, and how are we able to respond to the needs of our job seekers?
Well, there's plenty of areas that I could really start with, but overall, there is an immediate crisis most of the job seekers are in. They're really focused more on their issues at hand. I'm glad to have colleagues through Jewish Family Services in each department, staff of mine and colleagues of mine are really great at a certain arena of their expertise, of knowing how to provide services or resources to the clients. Clients dealing with homelessness, clients dealing with childcare issues, technology issues, food insecurity, language barrier, and how to apply for an application. We serve all types of clients here at Jewish Family Services, and the need is obviously different. A lot of people have certain circumstances that not a lot of people do have, but we do have expertise at Jewish Family Services that cater to that individual, especially the areas of, childcare if they may need, or housing if they may need, or mental health as well. Jewish Family Services has keynotes of many of my colleagues that I'm pointing at as if they're right there, but but they do help a lot of our job seekers. And when it comes to employers, I think Jewish Family Services has done plenty for the employment side as well. We go out to employers and really explain to them what clients are actually going through. So we are the bridge between both the client and the employer, whether it's language acquisition, whether it's a new skill they want to upskill to, further their career. Everyone reacts differently to stress situation, right? It's really how you respond to stress, especially with the COVID pandemic. It really depends on your background, your social support, your family, your friends, your financial situation, your health, emotional background, right? So it's really a lot of areas that I can keep going on and on about. But if we're talking about a single mother who has 4 children at a different ages, and they're all going to different school, and so their schedule is completely different how she wants to apply for a job, right? So we have to talk to employers and to see what flexibility they have. What is the measure for her to apply for a job? Or somebody who has been working at a Fortune 500 company who's been there for 10 years and now will not accept a job no less than what they used to pay because of their certain lifestyle that you live in. So how do you cater to that, right? So there's a lot of ways, but as a good coach, as a person who enables clients to set achievements and goals, we really have to address their strengths and weaknesses first. And most importantly, emotional intelligence really helps, shift their existing mind state in order to better themselves and into their advancement for their career in life. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. So this is a question, really advice kind of question out there to talent acquisition partners, recruiters. What advice do you have for job seekers looking for employment during this time? Are there specific tips, tricks, recommendations that you have?
Could you ask that question again? I don't think.
Sure. So really thinking about it from the talent acquisition perspective, the recruiting perspective, are there recommendations that the recruiting partners, folks that are aiding and assisting with external partners, have for our job seekers? Are there recommendations on ways in which to present in a virtual space, how to follow up, and ways to stay connected as a job seeker during this period of time?
From a job seeker's point of view, I think it's best for job seekers to really network, put themselves out there, and not to be afraid of rejection, and to really understand that failure is just another opportunity that you may succeed otherwise, right? So especially from a talent point of view, working with agencies like Jewish Family Services that really house a lot of great talent that come through our doors. We work with a lot of individuals who have set of skills and they're really trying to utilize and get themselves out there. We're giving them the tools, the accessibility to better themselves in order for them to be employable. That could mean workshops that we host either Tuesdays and Thursdays, do Zoom meetups, teach a lot of our clients how to network and put themselves out there. When it comes to the employer, I think internal job fair has helped us. Believe it or not, during COVID, we have done in-person job fair where it was really controlled environment. We've had 11 to 12 people, especially spaced out. It was a first-time experience, but everybody had masks. We provided sanitation, and then we realized that that grew within the community, especially the population that we serve that don't have accessibility to transportation or technology. So how do you provide employment to that population? I think we've innovated new ways of connecting an employer to a client by really the employer hosting us to provide the talent for them. That has been really successful as well. I think the next one that's coming up, we're hoping is at the end of this month. And if anybody knows anybody that's really looking for employment, I will put Jewish Family Services in the chat box for their website, and then please reach out to us.
When we're talking about advice to give to job seekers, so I'm just thinking about myself and how I have, what skills I have improved or enhanced or learned in the last 6 months. I think that would be one thing that I would point out to when I'm in an interview or in my cover letters to employers is talking about in this specific point in time, what have I done to enhance my skills? So for instance, I don't know about you, I have really come to understand how to use Zoom and what its capabilities are and things like that. In February, I didn't even know how to spell Zoom. Like, it was not on my radar. Now I'm offering advice to other people on how to effectively use Zoom. So that's an example. I would also like to encourage people. So we're in this point of time where there's a lot of focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have protests and demonstrations demanding racial justice and racial equity. And those things lead into the workplace, and they can't be ignored. And so another piece of advice that I would give to job seekers is to be prepared in an interview to proclaim what your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is. What are you personally going to bring to this new employer to help advance those issues?
I think that's extremely important. And as far as advice goes, I was actually going to mention something much similar to what Andrea said, is that change your perspective on what you're looking for in a job. Things have kind of changed over the last 6 months pretty fundamentally. And so what really matters, and be flexible as far as the job itself, and just because it has a certain title, what tasks, what skills are you developing, and what is the type of organization that you're going for? Do you want to work for an organization that is a champion for equality and diversity and inclusion? And definitely prepare and ask those questions. And maybe that becomes a factor in your job seeking process. It's not just about what you're making an hour or what your title is going to be, but do you work somewhere where you can be proud to say, I am part of this organization that really is a champion for all of these causes? And don't be afraid to put employers on notice and ask how they're doing those things and how they responded during COVID. Other than that, my advice is pretty much the same as it is to employees. Be flexible, be nimble, and don't be afraid to be creative with how your skill set applies to what the job is advertised for. It doesn't have to be so linear and so narrowly focused anymore. Really, just take the opportunity to, maybe this is a different path you can take, or just because it doesn't always fit the same package that it did before, it might still be an opportunity for you.
Absolutely, well said. Both comments, Amy and Andrea. I think those are those are great thoughts. And I think for anyone to lead with, how might you be inclusive in the work in which you're looking to either work for or with as a partner. So additional questions that have come in through the chat in terms of, as HR professionals, has anyone experienced the work through experiencing a layoff of a colleague of an employee and understanding, sensitivity to specific details, but what are some ways in which you've worked through those challenges? And if we've not had folks that have experienced that as an HR professional, recommendation to those that, to their peers and partners that have had to work through layoffs, and what are some other coping mechanisms, stress hardiness that you've utilized during this challenging period of time?
I haven't had to lay off anyone during COVID, thank goodness. Transparency, I think, is key. I did work for an organization where we went through a round of about 65 in a day because of an acquisition. And the employees knew it was coming, but it was an organization where a lot of them, that was the only place they'd ever worked. They had 40-year careers with that organization, and they all kind of ended pretty unceremoniously with one day. And so having hindsight to look back on that, and I think transparency, it might be trite, it might sound just like an easy answer, but both for the people who remain back with the organization and those going forward, I think being as transparent as possible, because it's emotionally difficult for everybody. But what I found is that for the people who are still with the organization afterwards, there's going to be this lingering fear of when the next shoe is going to drop, and what next big thing is coming, and the anxiety and the angst over everything. And then you have some survivor's guilt pushed on top of that. And so I think trying to be transparent with them and say, even if they don't take it at face value, but getting used to repeating what the current situations are. Either you're done with the layoffs, or we don't anticipate anymore for the next period of time, whatever that situation is. And just trying to be reassuring to them that, reminding if there's a policy on severance, reminding them what that is, so people can kind of confront that worst case scenario, even if it's not going to happen. Because I think, as someone with anxiety, you could tell me it's not going to happen, and I'm still probably going to spend a certain amount of time thinking it might still happen, even though you're telling me it's not. So I think just it's that empathy, listening, letting them feel their feelings, but then reinforcing that with what the facts of the situation are. Because hopefully by that point, with at least some of the employees as an HR department, you've built some kind of trust with the employees, and that they can see you as a resource that they can come to either for reassurance or for information on what the situation is. So as much as you can do that, as much as you're able to as an organization, I would definitely suggest giving them as much information as you can.
Well said, Amy, thank you. And just a call out in the chat. So if you are an employer experiencing a layoff, Ohio Means Jobs Columbus Franklin County has resources to assist at no cost to you as the employer. So reaching out to them would be a point well taken, regardless of the organizational or institutional resources. So if we can kind of shift back to building relationships with our newly hired colleagues, those that have been hired within the last 6 months. Are there tips, recommendations on the best ways in which to get to know colleagues when we don't have the benefit of the proximity of seeing someone, around the corner, or being able to knock on their door for lunch? What are ways in which we have found success in building and maintaining relationships in a virtual space?
Well, I've mentioned this a couple of times recently. It's funny, it's coming up now, but when the whole stay-at-home thing came into force, and I work from my home regularly. Before pandemic, I worked from my home. And then when we were required to work from home, I was, amused because I'm an introvert by nature. And all of a sudden the world was bending towards my preference. Like if I don't have to go out, I'm fine with that. If I don't have to meet people, I'm fine with that. So just as a general rule, but then I find that now when I'm outside, if I'm walking around, walking my dog or whatever, and I see somebody that I know, I am the chattiest of chatty Cathys. Like I just want to talk. And I know they're looking at their watch going, we got to go. We're done with this. And what is up with this woman? Like, why is she so needy? And it is because we are needy. We need people. We need human connection. And relationships are so hard. I said that at the beginning. And so Zoom is great. Telephone is great, but it doesn't replace that human connection. And I don't know what it is about being in a physical presence with somebody that makes it different, but it does. It just makes it different. It makes it deeper and more profound, that relationship. So in the meantime, we got to figure it out. I am a big proponent, and COVID or not, pandemic or not, I am a big proponent of talking. Talk to your people. Talk to your people. Do not email your people. Now, when you're managing your people, when you're leading your people, talk to your people. When you're discussing a project, when you're communicating information, when you're scheduling a meeting, you can email all the live long day. When you're managing your people, you do it either face-to-face in Zoom, or you pick up the phone and you have a conversation. Do it regularly, and whatever regularly means to you, you figure it out and you stick to that. Do it often, and whatever the frequency means to you, you do it often, and it's likely going to be different for each one of the people who report to you. And at least some portion of this communication, when you are talking with your people, is going to be about them and is about you as human beings. You are going to connect over the humanity. You're not going to talk about deadlines or work processes or metrics or measurements or anything like that. You're going to talk to each other as human beings.
On the other side of the flip coin to that, Angela, I think I would say also like to add is listen, not hear, but listen. A lot of things are happening during COVID. A lot of people are stressed, dealing with, either family or kids at home. So you really have to listen. And when it comes to individuals working together, especially when it comes to secondary trauma from helping a client out a lot, right? You deal with a lot of clients having all these issues, and then you give 110%. And then when it comes to your staff trying to talk to you, listen, right? It's really important for them to really exhale all that stuff they've just dealt with and what they have heard. It's really important to actually listen. As a manager, one things that you really have to critique and be more sharpening that tool is that listening concept. It's very, very important. You'll be surprised how much listening can do than talking. And no offense, but it really helps staff, even for the team morale point of view as well. So thank you.
I would love to be able to sit here and say we've got it figured out. But
No.
Pre-pandemic, we had our orientation process down pat, and where we started to stumble was when people were sent back to their home sites and started to train, and now the exact opposite has happened. Our orientation process it's kind of limping along a little bit because we have tried to figure out the best way to do it virtually, and with employees who don't have a baseline for technology and the technological access they need to be able to participate in our orientation. So it's not even a situation where we can all Zoom and at least see people face to face, because they don't often have the ability to do that. So sometimes it's over the phone or spaced out, remote, kind of slapped together. Something that would normally be done in the course of a single day is now stretched out over the course of a week or two. And so it seems very disjointed, and the information certainly isn't shared as efficiently as it would be if we had everyone in the same room and had that spirit of camaraderie, and you had a cohort of people that you were starting with that you'll always remember because you started together on day one. So we try the best we can with orientation, but now once they get to the site, they're thrown into it, pretty much into the deep end. They get trained, but there's no time to sit around and watch normal processes because there's really not a whole lot of that happening right now. So they're getting a real life orientation out in the job once they've been released there. But we really figured out a great way to go through our traditional orientation programming where they hear the totality of what the organization does and get to meet probably 10 different people throughout the day that they wouldn't normally interact with through the course of their job. We're missing all of that. So my plan would be, for once, whenever it becomes feasible to do so, having almost like a mixer, a meet and greet for anyone who started from April of 2020 until whenever that endpoint may be, to where we can all kind of get together, see each other face to face, share stories, that kind of thing. Because otherwise, I feel like we're going to be missing this whole group of people that missed out on an entire dynamic that was laid out very intentionally that we're just not able to accomplish right now. So I'll let you know if we figure it out. We're still working it out.
One day at a time, for sure. So this question, in essence, goes out to to our partners. Is there a way in which workforce professionals could partner with employers to help prepare job seekers or new hires? Is there more that Workforce Board can do to help support? And if there are examples of areas of opportunity, whether it's building relationships, building trust, preparing candidates, providing some tips and tricks and recommendations for calendar maintenance and how to stay on top of appointments, are there ways in which we can lean into our partners, and are there specific outcomes in which we could look to attach to that ask? So one of the areas that I think, from at least our perspective, from a healthcare perspective, much like you, Amy, have highlighted, that really providing a roadmap to our job seekers has been helpful, at least as we're continuing to navigate it. Even setting up the idea of getting together. We've had small, very socially distanced get-togethers, but your call out, Amy, in terms of the mixer, of really getting people together to share their experiences and just having that opportunity to talk as well as to listen, I think is incredibly impactful. So as there are ways in which to continue, I know it was mentioned in the chat earlier about, getting together in a park while the weather is still really nice and we're experiencing that little bit of fall before it gets really cold, looking to see if there are opportunities to get together, socially distance, even if it's for a few hours, for fresh air and conversation.
Well, Rachel, I don't really have anything more to add than, do what is right for your team. Find out what your team needs and wants. This is a time where, well, there are three levers of employment, as I like to explain it. And so one, we can move these levers in any area that we want. So the first lever is wages and benefits and things like that. The second lever has to do with work environment and culture, relationships with one's bosses and one's peers. So, you know, you can think of a company that has pays really well. They're really high on that first lever, but the work environment or the culture is really terrible and they're way down low on that second lever. It's going to take different types of people are going to respond differently in that environment. And then the third lever is about one's ability to accommodate both home and work responsibilities. And in the olden days, before COVID, people thought that that had to do with work-life balance. And that's not really what it is. I mean, even so, pandemic or not, people still need to be able to take care of their children. People still need to be able to take care of their aging parents. People still need to be able to take care of a family member or a loved one with an illness, take care of themselves with that. So an employer's ability to allow their employees to accommodate both their work and their home responsibilities, because everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to do, as I said before, inspiring work and be valued and respected while doing that work. And so give your employees that opportunity. So when you're figuring out the ways to enhance the engagement with your team in this really upside down world that we're in, you know, it's finding the things that are right for your people. And I love the idea of meeting in a park. I love, you know, the idea, as Amy was saying, sending out the DoorDash coupons or something like that. I've worked with some employers who sent care packages every couple of weeks with small personalized, you know, knickknacks that the boss knew that, you know, this employee was missing the basketball tournament, you know, and this employee had small kids at home that they were trying to educate, and this employee had, you know, and so doing those things that are meaningful to each individual employee, again, is going to demonstrate that that respect and that value that you have for your employees.
Well said. Thank you very much. So kind of keeping in terms of a time check, we're about 1:09. I know this session goes until 1:30. So we wanted to open this up to our participants from a Q&A perspective. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and or if you would like to unmute, I think we can manage the group size. I know a few folks have had to drop off for other meetings, so please feel free if you have questions that our panel members may answer or expand upon the areas in which we've discussed, because we've had a really wonderful, robust discussion.
I had a question. I was, I think the idea of, you know, and as a HR professional, as a manager, as a leader, you spend a lot of time thinking about your staff, trying to support them. Do you have any advice or suggestions on how, as directors and managers and HR professionals, we can manage ourselves in our own capacity as we continue to try to help people around us?
Well, yes. I'd like to jump in if I may. I think we forget when we say time management. Time is never on our side, so we can't really manage time. A lot of people would say, I wish I could split myself into two. I can get a lot done, but it's really about self-care. It's really about how you handle of taking care of your body, eating right, working out, getting enough rest to charge up your battery so you don't get burnt out at all, and going full throttle all the time and on a crisis mode will really drain the battery, and you really have to take care of yourself. It's not really going out and working out and you know, doing cardio, physical. It's anything that really is taking your mind off what's really stressing other people out, so you can think better, so you can clearly have an idea to resolve any issues. It'll come to you, but you just have to, take yourself out of that situation and go for a walk if you have to, or talk to somebody that has nothing to do with the industry that you work in, just so they can have that conversation to ease your mind. To me, that has helped me out a lot. Having that support service or having that support is really helpful.
For me, I totally agree with that. For me, two things have been key. Setting boundaries on the time that I work while I'm at home, because you fall into the trap of, am I working from home or living at work type of situation? And there's certainly been lines that have been blurred, phone calls that have been placed much later than they otherwise would have because we're all working from home. So trying to be kind of stringent and selfish with what those stop times are to make sure that I can break from one part of my day and move on to the next. And the other thing is, personally, I've had to get a lot more comfortable with saying, I don't know. I was always willing to say it before, but could usually give an estimate, a guess, an educated guess, something like that. And now I've had to get a lot more comfortable saying, I really just don't know. I don't have an answer. And trying to get more people's opinions. It's not even an issue of doing things collaboratively as much as it is just saying, like, I need some time to figure this out, because in all these situations, instinct doesn't necessarily serve you right, because my instinct isn't prepared for this. I don't know what the situation is. So getting a lot more comfortable personally saying, I don't know, I'm going to need some time to think about that. And that will serve me better in the long run. I have no doubt of that. But just having that, instead of feeling that pressure of always, because, in HR, people are always coming to you, fix this. I've got a problem. Please fix. And what are we going to do about this? We don't have enough staff. And there's an intrinsic pressure that I feel to be able to say, I've got an answer for you, or I can troubleshoot this for you and figure it out. But understanding that there's different motivations for why people are coming to you that way. They're freaked out. They don't know either. And so just being comfortable saying, we will figure this out, but I don't have an answer for you right now. I need to think about it. I think that has helped kind of diffuse some of that pressure that builds with constantly being asked what the next step is.
There's one resource that I would recommend. There's a book and a website, and it's called The 12-Week Year. And it helps, so it's kind of a time management book, maybe a strategic planning book also, but it is intended for an individual. It can also work with teams, but it helps you plan your accomplishments and what it is that you need to get done in 12-week increments rather than an annual planning. So, you think about it, in college, we mostly were on a 12-week year, right? And we got the syllabus at the very beginning, and we knew what we were going to expect and when the quizzes were going to be and when the term paper was due and then when the final exam was going to be. Setting up your work accomplishments and the projects in that 12-week year scenario helps to make things more manageable. And also, it can help you clarify and commit to doing the things that are important rather than doing the things that are urgent. Someone is knocking at your door saying, oh, please help me. We want to do that. We want to do the right thing, but is that really going to advance what it is that we need to get done? So I think being, and Ahmad and Amy have both said how being committed to yourself and that self-care, 12-week year is a good structure to be able to do that.
Thank you. That's a wonderful, wonderful tip. Some other thoughts have and some feedback has come in through the chat and in reference to office equipment, potentially kind of meeting the ergonomic needs of folks as they're working from home, turning a coffee table into a desk. So there have been some feedback here about some solutions that have come through in terms of a one-time $500 allowance to associates, colleagues to cover unexpected expenses regarding setting up home offices. Other groups have provided their colleagues, associates, opportunities to come in essence, bring home some office equipment. So no monetary exchange, but in essence, an opportunity to come in. We did that here at Mount Carmel. We are in a corporate building that is extremely large for the space in which we need, especially with folks working remote. So we opened it up to a bit of a garage sale. So if there's something out there that you're interested in and it is not otherwise grabbed, then by all means, kind of take it home. And that goes for extra monitors, extra printers, making sure folks have the equipment that they need. So I think it's about being creative and being flexible, being adaptable, all of those words in which we had heard earlier. So Opal and Chance, kind of taking a quick time check. I know we're a few minutes before 1:20. Are there other kind of areas, questions that we may address before we kind of turn things back over to you to close us out for the afternoon?
Well, I just wanted to say one last thing about, and my point of view is from bosses, from leaders, managers, directors, whatever. And there are typically two ways that people become promoted to be a boss. And one is because they are better at their job than anybody else around, so then they get promoted. Or two, they've been around longer than anybody else, so they get promoted. And neither one of those things has any correlation to one's ability to manage people. It's not that these people are bad people, it's just that we generally, as a general rule, we do a pretty terrible job at teaching people how to lead, teaching people how to be bosses and managers. And a lot of these things that we've been talking about are very practical solutions that are easy to implement, but it's not simple and it's not obvious. We don't come to this intuitively or naturally. So I would advocate for all organizations to ensure their people get instruction and have some coaching and mentoring on how to be a great leader, not related to performance reviews or anything like that. This is different. This is how to be the best manager of other people, how to have that relationship with other people, the people who depend on you for their livelihood, to be pay attention to those relationships and be intentional about those relationships.
I could not agree more, and think that is probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks that keep organizations from being successful, is seeing people who are promoted into people management positions that don't have those skills intrinsically, and the organizations they work for don't support providing that training for those skills. The only thing I'll leave with, and I'll just say thank you for asking me to participate in this. I think this has been very enlightening and almost cathartic in a way, just to kind of talk this out with other like-minded people. But the biggest thing I think that we can do is keep perspective. It's so easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day, and it seems like there's one roadblock after another. And as soon as we feel like we get one part of this figured out, a circumstance changes, and we just feel like we're constantly swinging at what that next windmill might be. So I think something that's helped not only with my local HR team, but with our management as a whole, when we kind of get stuck in that day-to-day and nothing's going right and it just seems like all the forces are against us, is refocusing on those silver linings that are coming from this. And from a practical perspective, we're able to do things as an organization now that COVID forced us to do, that we were not able to do and had not moved off the mark of 6 months ago. We had always talked about doing telehealth as a concept and never really took the steps necessary to put that into practice, and had to learn really fast how to do that in March and April. And so now that is almost becoming like a core part of our business, is being able to provide telehealth. And it makes perfect sense for what we do. We want to meet our patients where they are. And so that's a silver lining to me. Yes, we were forced to do it as a practical concern, but now not only are we providing an added service to our patients that is going to expand their access to quality healthcare, we have shown as an organization that this is something we've been able to add a dimension to what we do and add a whole new segment of training for our staff that I don't want them to leave, but it makes them more easily employable for their next step and for to progress their career. So it's the little things, I think, that help keep perspective. And yeah, things are really difficult right now, and they have been for some time, but there will be an end to this. There will be a time where this is not the only thing we talk about day in and day out. And I think ultimately, if you can focus on the little things that are going to make us better at the end of this, it helps cut out some of the noise and some of the distraction, and it makes it easier to focus on, you know, we got through it. And there is going to be that sense of camaraderie, I think, for we did get through it. We went through something highly, highly significant. And so I know it sounds a little touchy-feely, and that's not really who I am as a person, but it helps me on a personal level to know that this is not forever, but to see that all this effort that we're putting into making it work right now isn't going to be wasted, because the effort that we're putting in now is ultimately going to have a positive impact down the road when we're not in a pandemic. So I think this is helpful, and I appreciate everyone's participation.
I also want to add my 2 cents as well, and thank you for having me on this platform. To all the HRs and talent recruiters, think about diversity in your team. You'll have a better understanding of your customers than having that same plateau thinking, and rather having a creative individuals who, 1A, will care more, and it'll encourage innovation and creativity. It'll be easier to hire and retain talent as well. It'll boost your brand. And I have to plug in Jewish Family Services as one, right? So Jewish Family Services, we speak 16 to 14 different languages, and we could provide that assistance to a range of clients who, for one, may have language barriers, or they may need that assistance, right? Whether when you hear Jewish Family Services, you hear the name family. We really do care for our staff, and we really put them first. A lot of the people that really work here are mission driven, and if it wasn't, it's not really about the pay. You could talk to a lot of people, and for me, I've been here, I think I'm going to be on my 10th year, and I every year I get to find out more and more of what I could do to deliver services to the clients at hand, right? So again, I would strongly encourage diversity in your departments or in your line of work. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time, and God bless. And to Laura Fish, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you too, Ahmed.
Well, again, thank you all very much for the great discussion. And I'm a copious note taker. I have a red teacher pen, and I've been able to take several pages of notes. So, and then there's one more note in the chat, but I think it's certainly worthwhile in terms of leveraging and utilizing your employee assistance program, if you have one through your organization, and really promoting EAP and other well-being benefits that may exist. And even if it's as simple as creating a walking club, a virtual book club, discussing different tips and tricks and recipes, sharing a few personal moments, or things that have not gone well, or the screen looks great, but then behind are 16 piles of laundry and dirty dishes. It's okay to talk about those things, because that's the reality that everyone is facing. So again, thank you all very much for your time and your participation, and we'll look to continue this conversation in another platform at another time, and stay connected as a work team.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
And thank you to our speakers again. Thank you so much for your time and for leading this conversation.